Hello, Asher. Hello, Ruben.
Hi. Hi, Rabbi. How are you?
Good, Hashem. How are you?
Praise the Lord. And that's the ammunition.
Always praise the Lord.
And always passing ammunition. So
I'm just reading about King David in chapter 1 of Malachim. King David and the conquering and his clever method of going against
all his
Adoniah,
promises. Yeah, it's
his own son. But
right.
no, he was
yeah.
very publicly. He had to do it very publicly, you see. So we left no doubt.
Right.
Uh,
So this Shabbat was fun. This Shabbat was my bar mitzvah parsha. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Mazal.
Brought back,
Must be your birthday.
it brought back memories of today. I am a man. So, but,
Very nice. Mazal tov.
Thank you. That's a great parsha. Really, really wonderful stuff.
Yes. Jacob was Jacob when he said that I froze at night, watching sheep, was that following the halacha or was that beyond the halacha?
My guess is it's beyond.
Machloket.
Yeah. But what I find interesting, a lot of people don't realize, all 12 children that were born in Parashat Vayetze were born in a 7-year period. And so there's one thing that I really want to explore, and I haven't looked into this yet, and I want to. It says at one point after Leah gave birth to Yehuda, Vata'amod miledet. But she had 7 children in a 7-year period. So what exactly does that mean, Vata'amod miledet? I mean, she stopped for 3 months. Oh, wow, good for her. but she had 7 children in a 7-year period. So I don't understand. And it's also very clear, by the way, that there's no way that they were all born in the order that the Torah brings it, because that would mean that 4 children were born in between Leah's 4th and 5th, but she had 1 every year.
Mm-hmm.
So there was obviously, the Torah is bringing us the order to show us something else, not just the order they were born.
How do you know it was a 7-year period?
Because he worked for 7 years, married Leah.
Yeah.
1 week later, he married Rachel.
Yeah.
And then as soon as Yosef is born, he says, okay, my 14 years are up, let me go home now. Mm-hmm. And that's when he's convinced to work for 6 more years. So all 12 children were born between year 7 and year 14.
Mm-hmm. Unless when he said my 7 years are up, he just meant my 7 years have been up for a long time and now I want to go.
Maybe, but he says I worked for, well, but
maybe just saying I did my duty
for 6 more years.
Maybe I did my duty and I also did extra. I mean,
no,
you're right.
But then he says
yeah, no, but that could be just saying that he fulfilled his contract. But yeah, I hear you. It's a good question.
I want to try to,
and it's not even on a drush.
I really need to figure out the Talmud Miledet, because it really, within the context of the
maybe she was a prophetess. Maybe she had a nevuah that this was the end. She had a prophecy that she was notified.
But then she had 3 more kids in the next 3 years.
That was a miracle. That was every bad prophecy can be uprooted. Okay, let's go to our topic. Our topic is Kaf Tet. We're still in November. Chapter Parak Bet. Sorry, Halacha Bet. So I want to go straight to the.
Sorry, are we in the tour or the Shulchan Aruch?
Tour. I want to go to the tour, and basically I want to do tour Bet Yosef at the beginning here. And we'll look at the Shulchan Aruch also. Here, since we have the honor of Joel here at the beginning, why don't you honor us
I'm actually potentially here for the entire time today, except I'm also semi-watching my children, so who are here in quarantine. So who knows what's gonna happen? I might as well
Okay.
start.
Goes well.
And
You may as well start.
yeah,
So
Beth in
we're
the
in
tour.
bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were
All right.
talking about, by the way, we were talking about Khalifin. I don't know if nobody answered. Well, actually, one person answered me, but most people didn't answer me about my interesting double ring ceremony proposition that I found of Rabbi Dove. Was it
Linzer.
Linzer? Yeah, from
He's Chovaveh.
Hoveved, yeah, from
He's a,
Hoveved.
he's a really, really interesting individual.
Yeah. Actually, my best friend was actually was a roommate of his when he was still, well, not a roommate, lived down the hall, lived near him down the hall before he was a rabbi, when he was working as a computer. He was apparently worked for a number of years as a computer guy. Anyway, what was my kasha with that? My only difficulty, does anybody have a difficulty with this two? He said, well, why not give the 2 rings and have it act as chalipin? Is instead of the pen, have her give a ring to the chatan as the chalipin. So, I mean, I
it
would
looks
just
like they're exchanging. It looks like they're exchanging rings, and that's
and
the whole
women-
problem with Khalipin in the first place.
exactly. The whole problem
Yeah.
with chalipin is that, I mean, we say women are not allowed. Sorry, a marriage is not allowed to be created by chalipin.
Well,
So
I don't-
mapitom that you're going to do something that looks like chalipin.
I don't know if they clarify this with the ceremony he does. Like, for example, at the double kiddushin ceremonies I've been at, the Masada or Masada kiddushin is always like, just so everyone's very clear, like so-and-so is giving this ring to so-and-so to be a Mekadesh and Mekadesh at them. And so-and-so, they are not exchanging rings. They like make that as an explicit clarification.
Yeah, I understand, but that's sometimes actions speak louder than words. It's not so clear that you can say, I'm going to go into the McDonald's with my hamburger and eat that hamburger in McDonald's and say, I just want everyone to know this is my own hamburger. In other words, sometimes,
well, in fairness,
the circumstances speak. Maybe somebody is deaf. Maybe somebody didn't notice that. Maybe somebody was not listening at that moment.
I do think it is potentially different in the potentially more concerning with the Dov Linzer formulation, because they're in usually double kiddushin, there's 2 ketubah and people go through it's a very clear separate process. Whereas here it might be easier to miss something like that if it's happening relatively within the same amount of time.
But my point was that the whole purpose, we have this sort of a gezerah that you're not allowed to do something that looks like chalipin. And so it seems to be like you're doing something that looks like chalipin. I want to talk about chalipin more. I'll get a little bit later, but let's start now. So Joe.
With Bet in the tour?
Yeah.
Okay. Amralo, Tain Manila Floni, Vekadesh Ani Lecha, Unitano, Ve'amarla Hitkadshi Li Bemanesh, Natati Lefloni Mikudeshet. All these cases are a little bit crazy, but all right. So she says to him, give such and such to a third. She's marrying Reuven, and she says to give Shimon this, maneh, 100, coins or whatever, and then I'm going to be Kadesh to you. And
let's put Barack Obama in the picture.
Okay.
Even maybe he has to be Jewish, but I'm not sure. But let's say
give a third party. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's like somebody important, somebody that you have a lot of respect for.
Exactly.
Right?
It's a good point. Yes. So.
Or not. Actually, it's a machloket. That's a machloket. Is it an Adam Chashuv or not an Adam Chashuv?
Yeah.
Because we saw that a woman can marry a man and give the man a ring if he's an Adam Chashuv, right? And the hana'ah that she gets, but this is actually something different. It's not it's not the hana'ah that she knows the satisfaction that this Plony is getting this money, but what is it? It's this, it's what satisfaction?
Well, he's doing a favor for her, and something in that doing that favor is the hana'ah that is going to count for
the hana'ah of knowing that her will has been fulfilled. I think I saw it best phrased. Wait a second, I want to just jump. Lamed. Yeah, if you look, just turn to the Shulchan Aruch for a second, and you look at the Chelkat Machokek in Dalet.
Okay. This is V'amar la haret mekudeshet li.
Yeah.
All right. Bibach katav davka de'amar la toch kedei. Oh yeah, this toch kedei dibur l'netina. All right. So it has to be within 3 words of time of actually giving. Aval le'achar kedei dibur havile shtika. Right. But if it's after the dibur, that's as if silence. The le'achar matan ma'ot ve'ina mekudeshet. Right. Ve'in devarav berurim delo amru shtika le'achar matan ma'ot lav klum ela davka shetchilat netina haya b'torat pikadon.
So wait a second. If you go back to what we said in the tour, or even here, he says, Amar la 10. So again, he says, she says to him, give this money to this person, and I will be
married to you,
right. I'll be married to you. And then he has to say, Va'amar la harei at mikudeshet li b'hana'a matana zo shenatati al picha. You are married to me with the hana'ah that you got, that I gave this to this other guy. That's the hana'ah that hana'ah, and he has to say that harei at mikudeshet li with the hana'ah that you got from me giving this gift to this other guy. And on that, the Bach says it has to be right away,
immediately,
because otherwise, I would even almost imagine that 3 people are in the room. They're all there, and you're giving it, and then you say this immediately, so that it's because otherwise, you just gave him this thing. How does she know when she's married to you?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. Sorry, Avnei.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the part of that is that what we have in the normal kiddushin is her accepting the object as the statement that she wants this kiddushin, which is important. And here we have her statement that's important, and because it's all one act, the giving and the taking happens in the same moment in the normal kiddushin. Here we have this slightly sketchier case where if it happens later, there's some fuzziness, and that's why they want to come in and say it has to happen immediately.
I mean, her acceptance happened before the event in some ways here too.
Right.
It's
right.
It's like she says, "Do this for me, and I'll be married to you," and then he has to make a statement. And the way the Bach plays out is he literally has to be there when she gives it. It's
right. What's the other alternative? The other alternative is that that he would go off to New York, give this to the guy, come back and say, "Harei at mikudeshet li," because there has to be a moment of the marriage. And it's kind of weird to say that he's married when the man gives the money to the other man. So you want to say that she's married at the moment when he has to say Harei at mikudeshet li. He has to say that at some point. So when is he going to say it? It has to be after the event. And if it's so it could be a long time after the event. So the box says no. It should be. But the
Chalkat Mechokek says that it's fine in that scenario because he's
when
he tells her.
I'm not there yet. I'm in the box. Right. You're right. Yeah. So here. So the box. So continue.
All right. Where was I? Avein Rav Brurim, the lo amru shtika le'achar matan ma'ot lav klum. Right, we never said that. Ela davka, except for this one case. Ela davka shetchilat netila haya b'torat pikadon ve'amar le hapikadon shebed be'archa kvar hareat mekudeshet bo vehi shatka vadai lav klumu. Right, that's the case where it needs to be immediate. Aval nidon didan. Right, dehi amra tein maneh lefloni shemakom ploni vet kadesh ani lacha vehu kiyem shlichuta. Im le'achar zman ba'ilea ve'amar la haret mekudeshet b'mana zo shenatati al picha hoda'a zo have kematan ma'ot debe'ota sha'a hi nehenet shenitkayem dibura.
Now listen to that. Wait, just stop there.
Yeah.
So he's troubled by one thing. There has to be what's happening at the moment. Just because the notification of the event is not an event. The notification of an event is not an event. An event is an event. The fact that I come back a week later and tell you I did it, what event is happening at this wedding? So he says, I'm going to answer that. that she was in doubt maybe whether it would happen. And at that moment that she found out he did it, she's finally got that satisfaction that her words were fulfilled. And it happened at that moment, a month later.
But there's also monetary value in what he did, right? Yes, fair enough, she got enough from the fact that Mikhaim Dibura. But like the fact that he went all the way to deliver money to someone else, that's also worth something. More than
but she has, but she, in other words, you're saying, what if she said, plow my field? But that would be different. It is a monetary value to go travel to New York and give this to this guy.
Exactly.
But she didn't benefit from it. What did she has to benefit?
She didn't pay for it. She got the service for free.
Except Ruben.
I mean, if she owed him money, I don't think we're talking about a case where like she owed him money. She just wants to give. The only benefit she's getting is that her word is fulfilled.
Right, but she gets to benefit from the fact that her words are filled for free, right? And that's the benefit that she gets from it, right? So that there's an actual monetary value from it, besides from the hana itself.
I don't know. No, I don't know that it has to be though, right? No one.
But that is that is hainohaf. That is the same thing. The hana'ah that she gets is she would have paid for somebody to do that, and now she's satisfied that it got done. So that satisfaction is the hana'ah that she would have paid for.
But there has to be some kind of kinyan happening. Like if she says, "Wash the dishes," and from the hana'ah I'll be mekudeshet to you, I think that doesn't work. Right, there has to be a kinyan somewhere, right?
In other words, if she would say to him, wash your own dishes, or wash Plony's dishes, not my dishes, wash Plony's dishes, I don't see why that wouldn't work. Why wouldn't that work? Wash Plony's dishes. What's the difference between wash Plony's dishes and give him money? Why are you saying there has to be a kinyan?
That is happening agav kinyan. Maybe I'm just throwing out an idea.
No, I don't think so. I think that there has to be.
We haven't seen any.
There has to be hana'ah. There has to be hana'ah going in the direction of the man to the woman.
But then why don't they bring up examples of doing other things? Like I'm with Josh.
Well, we do give an example. We give an extreme example. The extreme example is where it's reverse, where she gives a very important person money, she can get married.
But there's still money that exchanges hands.
Yeah, but it's the wrong direction. You're saying that has some significance because even though it's the wrong direction?
Yeah, I think that's right. Isn't that what you're saying, Josh?
Yeah.
No, but I think that now, as it relates to, sorry, Josh, go for it.
No, just thinking out loud that all the examples are with the kinyan happening, and like you said, the hana'ah goes in her direction.
I hear what you're saying.
But it's still agav kinyan.
You're saying there's two things going on. One is that it's kinyan kesef, so that money is being given to someone. And the other thing is that she gets a benefit. And they're like, both of those things have to happen. Normally, you give the money to her and she gets benefit. But if you give the money to somebody else, then she still would have to get some kind of benefit some way. But normally those two things are connected in one act. You give a ring, she benefits from it, and she gets them, and there's a money going transaction. I think it sounds very compelling what you're saying, but did anybody say it though?
I think the benefit and the money are the same thing, right? There's two different cases. There's the Adam Chashuv and there's the regular guy, right? When she sends the money out to the regular guy, the benefit she gets from it is that she didn't have to pay for the service. However, when you give money or you give a present to Adam Chashuv, there is a monetary value attached to it because there's a real anah to it. Imagine that you were able to give like a present to Barack Obama, just to get as an example. You'd be willing to pay for that.
But then you can
but the question we're asking is, what if I would just wash the windows of Barack Obama's car? Is that, I didn't get any money. What Josh is suggesting is that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work.
I think that would. Adam Chashuv is a different thing, right? Because there's the hana attached to the fact that he lets you do it. And that's the hana attached to it, right? You have access to that person.
I don't have
when you like to Adam
So then let's find an example. We have to find an example.
We have to find an example, exactly. What Josh is pointing out is that every example there is some kind of money going on. Why didn't the Gemara come up with an example of where there is no money and there is actually an example of that I can think of, because there's one where the hana'ah of you have money, you have a loan by me. You know, I lent you money, and you're supposed to give it back at a certain date, and I'm going to extend the date. And if you say bahana'a zo that you get from my extending that date of the money, you know, now you don't have to pay it back so soon. That we can get married by. Now there's
Also,
no money going. There's like
in the next
previous money.
Siman, there's a case where like the guy gives bread to like a rabid dog that's chasing her, and it's like at least like suffix there because the benefit is that he saved her life from the rabid dog.
And there's no money.
But
No,
the,
but it's
but
like it's
but that's
the
a great
bread, which is
example
worth
because even there,
something,
there's
but
somebody.
the money.
Wait, but he gave the bread to the dog.
Yeah.
I don't think that counts.
But then
Dogs can't do
didn't
a
it
kinyan.
just then why didn't it say he chased away the dog?
Well,
I mean,
right? It's a
pretty like yes, but like pretty much almost unanimously, everybody says the benefit that's like happening there. Although that is a case of like suffix kiddushin, but it's suffix because we don't know her like ratzon there, that we don't know if that was like.
But what Josh
what
would
she
say
wanted.
is that money was given to the dog, so money was transferred. But
It
there's
was
No,
still
but
Shabbat
that's
Pruta.
what-
It was Shabbat Pruta.
But a dog is very different than giving money to a human. I just like don't think that we can
I
use
also
that
think-
same form.
I
I
also
think that
tend to
that's good
agree.
proof of like this isn't about giving to a dog in a formalistic sense. It's about the benefit that you get from being saved from being
But it
attacked
is
by a
an
wild
interesting.
dog.
It is an interesting observation to note that there's always something being moved around, some object being moved around. Except in my example was a loan that just extended the time. Yeah, Joel.
You know, I just about the dog example. I mean, yes and no, because it isn't a case where she says give the thing to the dog. He says be married to me with this piece of bread, and she says hey give it to the dog instead. So it's a little bit different, I think, in that sense, where he is intending to actually give it to her, and she's saying just do the kinyan by giving it somewhere else, putting it somewhere else. So I think
Right, like if I would say, she would say, put the ring instead of on my finger, put it in this little box I'm holding, this box on the table.
Yeah, so I think it's a different story in that sense, potentially. It's not necessarily. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think we need to find an example that's like very clear. The loan one kind of.
I think it's a very interesting question. I think it's a very interesting question about whether pure hana'ah as opposed to a transfer and then some kind of hana'ah works. I tend to think it does, but I am bothered by the fact that most of the examples seem to have something going on. But I tend to think it would work because, like I said about the loan. But wait, So we were just almost finishing this Helkat Machokek, and he said that the event that happened,
is a machloket, right?
What?
Extending the loan itself is a machloket achronim, right? Whether that counts.
Yes, but right. But those are achronim who say that if you have to explicitly say with the hana'ah, not with the loan, with the hana'ah that you derive from the fact that it seems to be, from the fact that I extended the loan, then that hana'ah is what I'm giving you now. And there's nothing changing hands, and yet they say, and then those achronim say it works.
That's the best example so far.
Yeah. Okay, so we just were in the middle, at the end of the Chelkat Machokek, and he was just saying that that we need an event. That's what I understand. We need an event to be transpiring now. That's what the Bach was saying, and that's why the Bach was saying it needs to be Toch Kedei Dibur from the event. And I'm saying that the Chelkat Machokek is saying I got a new event for you. I pulled a rabbit out of a hat. There's the event of her finding out that this happened. That's also an event. And then at that moment, it happened. She's satisfied. But now we have a couple more words that you can say a little bit different.
Ve'af im nodala kodem, right?
Now I got in trouble. You say, what about if he called her on the telephone and said, I did it, and now I'm coming home to marry you.
So, all right, mikol makom hi mekudeshet de lo garam asukim beoto inyan. So she's still mekudeshet because what? There's no it's no lesser an event, shall we say, when the two of them are just talking and he gives her something. So
right. What's the point of that?
I mean, I think the idea is that is them. The whole thing was like a continuous asukim, and you can kind of jump around. Idea. I think that's what he's getting at, but that's the way I understood him. But I wasn't sure. I was actually a little confused by this piece.
Yeah, a little bit confused by it too. But yeah, what does it mean? Asukim ba'oto inyan. In other words, there's no dibur going on. We talked about it. We talked about, yes, let's get married on Wednesday. Yeah, we should. oh, okay, what should we, we should buy flowers. And by the way, here's the ring, but there was no real dibur of at that moment. Yeah.
But that's the right. The Ramah does say right in the Haggai, he's going to say right if they're this whole same case, but he doesn't say anything, but they're like talking about marriage during that, right? Then it counts. So Lexi's nodding, so I think I'm onto something that.
Yeah. So read the Ramah.
That's what I assumed he was referring to. That he was just building off of the next bit and.
Yeah.
Read the Ramah.
So okay. So v'im hayu asukim. This is Ramah kaftet bet here. V'im hayu asukim be'oto inyan. All right. Afal pi shenatan stam betzivia. All right. Hareze mikudeshet. Right. So he, right, she gives him, says, give such and such the ploni, and he does it. And he doesn't say to her haret mikudeshet, but they're talking about kiddushin or whatever it is. That counts. All right. The
way I want us to get married is by you. I'll make it extreme. By you giving this money to this guy. That's why I want to do it. And he says, okay. And then they continue talking. And then he walks down the street and gives it to this guy. So when are they married? At that moment that he gives it to her? That he gives it to him?
Sounds like it. Yeah. So, or it's or it could have been. I mean, I think the other way to read the Chokat Machokek here is the moment she finds out that is when they were married. And even though when he informs her, she already knew. Well, then they were already married. Because they were asukim be'oto inyan, and he doesn't say anything. Right. And so as soon as he finds out, right? Because he said v'chol davka shehi hitchila lomar ten maneh lefloni aval amar la hu tchila v'hi omeret ten lefloni. All right. Amra lo hilvem maneh lefloni. That's a whole different topic. Well, it is. I'll keep going. Amra lo.
Wait. So let's talk about that second thing you said.
Yeah.
V'chol davka. Shehi etchila lomar ten mana leploni, aval amar la hu tchila vi amar ten leploni. Now she said, "How about I give this money? No, how about I give you this money?" And she says, "Well, no, give it to Ploni."
Yeah,
so that doesn't work.
We talk about that next Siman. It's like they give it to your father, to my father. It's like her saying, like, no. Like
exactly. I think that's the way I understood it. Exactly. It's like her saying, "I'm not. You want to give money to somebody? Give it to tzedakah."
So is the Rama quantifying the hana in a certain way? Like it's only a hana that's worth something when she starts it, not when he proposes it and she say go for it type of thing.
Well, I think it's not about hana. I think it's about ratzon. I think it's that like when she says like, give this to Ploni and he does it, then she's like saying, I would like to be mikudeshet to you, and this is how you're giving me hana or whatever.
Yeah, but there has to be exchange of value, no?
No, but as in like when he initiates it, the whole point is just that like if he says, if I give you this ring, it'll be mikudeshet, and she says, give it to Joe.
She basically says
just her saying.
Exactly. She's basically saying
no. She's saying I don't want it.
She's saying I don't want this thing. Give it to my niece. Give that ring to my niece. I don't want that thing. So he says, "Oh, I'm just redirecting it." So then we were married, and Ramah says, "No, you're not married." She was just being polite in saying, in rejecting this gift.
Can I ask a technical question? Is there a word missing in this Ramah to say?
It does seem like his word missing. Okay. It's like you should say "re'eh." Well, he says this. Wait, what does he say? V'hi omeret ten leploni. He should say
lo mikudeshet.
Lo mikudeshet is kind of missing there.
It's at the end of the Ramah. That's why like he flips to another topic, but at the very end of the Ramah he says "Eina mikudeshet." I assume he covers the whole gamut of cases here.
Got it.
All right, nice. Okay. So that's this other case. Then go on.
Oh, I'm still going. Okay. Amra lo hilve maneh lefloni ve'kadesh ani lecha. All right. Ve'ilve lefloni ve'amar la hare at mikudeshet bo have kiddushin kemo b'matana. All right.
So explain that case. Wait, explain that case.
So it's a similar case, except she says to lend money to somebody and I'll be married to you by it, right? And then he lends the money, and then he says to her, "You're mekudeshet li with this," all right? Then that's kiddushin. It's the exact same case. It's a loan instead of a matana, but it still counts.
Right, because you might think that because we're going to talk about loans not working, but the Gemara talks about a loan not working. But this kind of a loan does work. When the Gemara says a loan doesn't work, is where the loan was already given. And you
That's
just
gonna be the
sort
next
of,
piece here.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think so, right? אבל אם הרוויח זמן מלווה על פיה וקדשה בו אינה מקודשת, right? If you extend the period of the loan on her request, I think that's what he means here. That doesn't count. So
To somebody else.
yeah, and not to her. We're not talking about a loan to him or to her. We're talking about a loan to Barack Obama here, or it doesn't have to be Barack Obama anymore. But
Yeah, to anybody.
yeah.
Al piha v'kid shabo eina mekudeshet. Right.
It doesn't count. Yeah.
Because
So.
that's very interesting, actually. That sort of supports what Josh was saying, right? Doesn't that?
Mhm.
Because that supports what Josh was saying. Because here she is getting hana. Her word is being fulfilled. Just like her word was being fulfilled in anything else. But there was no money transferred. It's very interesting. Right? Why that doesn't work. So wait, let's go to the Beit Yosef. Let's go back to the Beit Yosef. Notice he says here in the parentheses, Beit Yosef B'Shem HaRav. So let's go back to the Beit Yosef. Let's have somebody else read. Maybe Yavni. So it just sort of started that Beit Yosef. We didn't really say much of it. So let's go back to the beginning of it.
Okay, I need a moment to open that other book.
Yeah.
Sorry, where in the Beit Yosef?
Go back to bed.
Mine is not marked so clearly. Can you give me some words?
Amra lo ten mana leploni, ekadesh ani lecha.
Oh,
It's
okay.
really the very beginning.
אמרו לו תן מנה לפלוני וקדש אני לך וכולי. שם אמר רבא תן מנה לפלוני וקדש לך מקודשת מדין ערב. ערב לאו אף על גב דלא מתי הנאה לידי כמשעבד נפשי. היית נמי אף על גב דלא מתי הנאה לידה כמשעבדה. כמשעבדה ומקנה נפשה. ופרש רש"י.
Wait. So explain that.
Oh yeah. This is just
is
quoting the Gemara.
Right. This is the Gemara that I assigned. Right.
Right. This is quoting the Gemara that who is it learns that Rava learns. It says that it works for her to say, give him money and I will be married to you, give this other person money and I will be married to her, by analogy from a guarantor, that the guarantor says, give money to so-and-so and I will be like responsible to you. It changes my status with respect to you. Even though I'm not getting anything out of it, it still changes my responsibility to you. Right. So too, she is not getting anything, but she is still changing her status.
Right. Everyone understands what an arev is, like a guarantor for a loan. So I say a guarantor is essentially saying, give money to my, the father, let's say, or the mother, the parents say, give money to my son. They go to the bank and say, give money to my son, and I'll guarantee the loan. So they're obligating themselves, but the son is getting the money. They're not getting any money, or the daughter is getting the money. So the arev is obligating himself to something. So in this case, the woman is obligating herself to something, even though she derives no benefit. If you think about it now, doesn't that seem to contradict what the Chelkat Machokek just said?
About her needing to get Hana.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. The whole Gemara's point is that, right?
Right.
Afal gav de lo mati hana'ah. It even uses the word hana'ah. Doesn't even use the word kesef. It uses the word hana'ah. De lo mati hana'ah liyada. No hana'ah came to her hand. That's not called hana'ah to have your will fulfilled. Yeah. Right? Is your will fulfilled? I wanted that money. I wanted the bank to give my child money, and they did it. That's not called hana'ah. That's what the Gemara is saying. Literally, that's what it's saying.
Maybe you could reinterpret Anna as something that has monetary value, and then it would make sense.
Yeah, you could. I say literally that's what it's saying. You could say, oh no, when the Gemara says hana'ah, it means money, and the Halakha is talking about hana'ah. Okay, but it's not what the Gemara says. I'm just saying the Gemara says the word hana'ah. I could have said the word klum. No, nothing came to her hand. No physical thing came to her hand. But it says hana'ah. It even says the word hana'ah. It seems a little bit different from the Chelkat Machokek. Just interesting. Okay. Anyway, any comment? Any other comment? I mean, yeah, I agree with you, Reuben. Any other thoughts? I don't know. Wait, Reuben, you like to be called Reuben or Reuven?
Reuben, or if you want to pronounce it right, say Reuben. But Reuben is fine.
All right.
Wait,
Reuben?
say the
What?
right way again,
Reuben.
slowly.
What language is that?
That's French.
Ah, okay.
French is my first language. I was born in Paris.
Yeah.
But Reuben's fine.
Okay. So go on. So that's the Gemara. That's the Gemara that we learned. This whole idea of giving the money to the third party is from Arev, from the din of Arev. And Rashi, now he quotes Rashi.
ופרש רש"י ואקדש אני לך, וכשנתנו לו אמר לי התקדשי לי, וכשנתנו לו אמר לי התקדשי לי, מקודשת,
Wait, stop there.
Yeah.
Stop there. Now this is an important point here. This it didn't say in the Gemara about him saying it. It sounded like the moment he gave the money, they're Mekudeshet. Rashi comes in and says, oh, but he has to say, Va'amar la hitkadshili, and then it's Mikadeshet. That's a very important, I mean, you just can read over this Rashi and say, what is this point in this Rashi? That's the point of this Rashi. And that's what we saw in the Shulchan Aruch. Yeah, Lexi?
I was thinking, like, potentially we could respond to our kushia about, like, this case being no hana'ah as being like that. That's why they need to say that it's midin arev, right? That it's kind of this particular, it's comparable to this particular scenario, which is kind of like unusual compared to other things where with the arev, even though they don't receive any benefit, they're kind of like making themselves obligated to the moveh, that like in this case, it's comparable to the din arev, and that's why she's able to be mekudesha. But derech klal, just like getting hana is like necessary.
What was the case that the Chelkat Machokek was talking about? Was it not this case? It was a different case?
It's exactly this case.
I thought his was about where the person doing the shlichut is. Oh yeah, no, it is this case. Yeah, I take it back.
So
I do think it responds why this is different than other cases of hana, but I think it's still difficult for the chelkat mechokek.
Yeah.
Or potentially that's him giving his like what the underlying reasoning for arev is, that it's about kind of like the importance of this thing being done in the position you're serving, but that's not the language that he uses or that the Gemara uses.
In other words, the Gemara seems to say that like a kinyan of we're going to start thinking about it in this way. There's a kinyan of chayavut. There's like a legal moment of a chiyuv applying to an arev, and that legal chiyuv we can call it a kinyan, a change of status. That moment occurs even without the arev receiving anything, and so there can be that kind of kinyan also by a woman. A woman can mechayev herself to the man, even though she is not sort of the other end of this kinyan. She can obligate herself to the man, even though she didn't receive anything.
So is he basically extending the way by which a woman can be Mikudesh?
No, I think not. It's not a new way, because there's three ways you can get married, and one of them is money. So the man is still giving money, but so he's doing his part. The question now becomes, what's her part? There's a her part too, and the her part too is that she has to receive something. But well, let me say it differently. Her part too is that she has to mechayev herself to him. He has to give her money, and she has to do her part, which is to mechayev herself to this man. And she can do that even without her being the one who gets the money. But the man has to still give the money. In other words, the man has to do his part. He has to give money. If she wants to redirect it to some other person, that's her business. But she has to mechayev herself. Now, the question is, can a person mechayev themselves when they didn't get anything? Is there such a concept? And we say, yes, there is, by Arev. So actually, it comes out that a wedding, if we, has two, her saying, her taking the ring is nonverbal, but she is mechayeving herself to the man, to be his wife. And the point is, she can do that even without her being the one who received that ring.
So we're talking about a case where the man takes money that belongs to him. He takes his own money, give it to someone else, right?
Yes.
So what we're saying is that similarly to Aref, even though she's not involved in the money, or she doesn't own the money whatsoever, she's still mekudeshet because she owes him the money. She's responsible towards him.
No. She doesn't. It's nothing to do with the money. She doesn't have to give money to anybody. She has to give herself. She has to allow herself, whatever. She has to give herself, just obligate herself to her husband to be his wife.
That's what it is. She owes the guy the money, even though she doesn't have to pay him back. She still owes him.
No. She doesn't owe anybody any money.
Because he gave from his own money, right?
No.
Arev is a different case. Arev is a different case. And we're comparing the two cases. Arev is a case where the Arev comes to the person with the money and says, lend this money to so-and-so, and I will be mechayev to you to pay it back.
Right. So same thing here. Give your money to this guy, and I'll be mechayev to pay it back.
She's acting in the same way. Give your ring to so-and-so, and I will be mechayev to you.
But I will be mechayev to you not to give it back. I will be mechayev to you as a wife.
Yeah,
right, I will be legally bound to you.
To give it back. Exactly.
I have a question. Hi.
Yes.
So in this case, let's assume he gives the ring or the money or whatever to Ploni, and then she decides to change her mind and doesn't want to get married. Does that matana then get retracted as a contract involving the third party or not?
I don't understand. Once he gives the money
if
to the third party, according to this way we're reading the Gemara, she's instantly married. Imagine he's in the room. Imagine the three of them are in the room together. That's the easiest way to understand.
So it's not contingent on his coming back and saying Halayat Mikudeshet Li and that being the culminating act. Or comparing the Gemara versus the case in Beit Yosef.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm showing that this, this Gemara doesn't seem. I mean, Chelkat Mechokek's the way we first understood everything, with there having to be an act at the moment that the Kiddushin, the Gemara seems to be saying, no, the simplest way to let's say, reconcile them is that the Gemara is talking about where they're all three in the same room. It's not even talking about a case where they're far away. And where they're far away, maybe it's different, and maybe the Chelkat Mechokek is right about that, where they're far away. But the Gemara is talking about where they're all three in the same room. And at the moment that he gives that money to that third party, she is Mekudeshet. It's almost like he says, Hare at Mekudeshet, Bekesef Shani Noten Leploni Al Picha, according to your command. I mean, it doesn't really answer the Chelkat Mechokek, but partially. Yeah, Joel.
This, knowing very little about Choshen Mishpat, does this work in any other Kinyan Kesef too?
It should.
Okay.
I mean, Kinyan Kesef, yeah, it should. Kinyan Kesef does not work by metaltalin, remember. Kinyan Kesef only works by karka. So yeah, you could say, give this money to so-and-so, and now you've acquired this. I want to make this point though. I actually listened to your shear, Joel.
And I messed up.
No, well, you did say a couple things wrong. I don't remember. You did say a couple things wrong. I don't remember what they were now. I thought them at the time and I didn't write them down. But I just want to say one thing, which is that Kinyan, I've said this a million times, but maybe I said this a million times. Kinyan has nothing to do with like, Kinyan is this magical thing that the object or the land becomes mine. It has nothing to do with a obligation to pay. I could acquire the thing having not paid anything. I still have an obligation to pay for it, but it's now my thing. So there's two things. So kinyan kesef, even though we talk about kesef, it's not necessary to give all the money for the field in order to own the field. You could give a pruta, and now you own the field. It's a very, like, the rabbis, it sounds in normal secular law, you would say you give all the money and then you own it. But we have contracts. See, we have contracts, and they don't have contracts. There's no such thing as a contract. You sign when you sign on the Chatan doesn't even sign on the ketubah. Some Chatanim do sign on the ketubah, but it's just for show. There's no meaning to that. There's no such thing as a contract.
We have another. Isn't that what shtar is? Or I guess we'll get there when we get there.
No, shtar is not the contract. No, shtar is a piece of paper that you write on it. Harei at mikudeshet li, and you hand it to the woman.
Wait, why is that not what do you mean by a contract then?
I mean, a contract. And what about, like, I can give if you could buy, I guess you can buy land with a contract. I also don't, I'm not an expert on kosher mishpat, but I don't know kosher mishpat much. I think though, if you can buy land with a shtar, it would mean you would write on the shtar, this, land is yours. Let's say, I don't know, and then you would hand in the paper. But that doesn't mean that you don't. But there may be some obligations with that all of a sudden to pay money.
Well, yeah, isn't it?
But
like
they're not written in the contract. The fact that they're not written in the contract is meaningless. The contract, a normal contract, has in it the written obligations. So actually, that's what I want to. So let me explain this other thing, which is how does the chalipin work? I want to explain more clearly how does the chalipin work by a wedding, and that is like this. What is that chalipin that is done commonly at a wedding? What it is that the chatan is obligating himself. He's obligating himself to the woman to mefarnes her and give her clothing and food and all the things that he's obligating himself to. But just the fact that he writes it down on a piece of paper has no significance. I could write down all these things, and even have witnesses see me writing this down, and I want to sign it. That doesn't have. It's not that obligation has to have a kinyan on it. In other words, words can also be bought in a sense. So the words that he said have to be bought by the kala, by the woman. Now, how does she buy it? Well, what happens is actually the Rav who is giving the handkerchief to the Chatan is buying it on her behalf. Because of the prince, is buying it on her behalf. Because, simply you could just say, because Zachin la'adam shelo b'fanav. You're giving him a benefit. You're giving her, the kala, a benefit that she's getting clothes and all these obligations. The obligations that he made are chal because he acquired those obligations for her with that. And how did he acquire it? You need to do an act of kinyan to acquire it. And what kinyan is that? Chalipin. So the chalipin is the exchange of this pen, and the pen or the handkerchief goes to the chatan, and the chatan's obligations go not to the rabbi, but to the kala. And you can it's like a triangular act here.
I agree with you, but I'm not sure the Rambam agrees about that, actually. I think the Rambam objects to that idea to some extent.
Yeah, okay.
That's the way I was understanding him, that he thinks that is overkill of for stuff like that, you don't actually need a kinyan on it. That it's like once the thing is signed, it's signed, and by the witnesses.
Okay. Was that one of the Rambams that you taught in your shir?
Yeah. He's got this whole thing where he thinks that people are we'll have to find it again, but he's like, there's all these other actions people do kinyan for. It's because he calls it he doesn't call it shtut, but he essentially says that. It's so.
All right, I don't want to but that's the way I understand what's going on. Even the Rambam would probably understand it the way I'm in. He just may say you don't have to do this, but but that what I'm explaining is what's going on, and it relates also. It's not necessarily kanim adam shelo b'fanav. Well, sorry, it relates to slave, which we're about to see. Because a slave, how does a slave work? A slave, he has no money, but somebody else comes along and gives his owner money, and then the owner has obligations imposed upon him, or he accepted obligations upon him, namely to free the slave, but not to the person who gave him the money, to the slave. That obligation is to the slave. That's really what's going on with the rabbi and the pen. He is giving the pen to the chatan, and the chatan is freeing, is obligating himself in the same way that an owner of a slave obligates himself. I mean, that sounds really bad, but don't connect it too much. But that's the idea. We're going to learn it from the fact that a slave can be, the master of a slave can be obligated to free him by the fact that a third party gives money to him. And then he's going to have a chiyuv klape the slave. And that's what's happening with the chatan. He is a chiyuv klape the woman to mefarnes her.
But why do we need a rabbi in this case? I mean, besides from the aspect that needs to be supervised, but like, why do we need a third party?
Any Jewish person could do that.
No, but why do we need a third person is my question, because the woman is an independent legal entity. So we don't need a third
well, that's
party.
exactly what, I think what Dov, I keep forgetting his name.
Linzer.
Linzer, he's famous, I know. I keep forgetting his name. Dov Linzer is saying that let her do it. You don't need the rabbi to do it. It's true. You could do it. You could have a mixed tish. You know, the men and the women together at the tish, and then they do this thing before the wedding. That would actually be, in my opinion, better than what he suggests, because it's clear that it's not the kiddushin. Before the kiddushin, it's this. She's doing chalipin. She gives him a pen, and he gives her the chiyuvim. And that you could do at the tish beforehand, and then at the chuppah he gives the ring for the kiddushin. That makes more sense. I don't know if it's aesthetically pleasing, but
right. I think part of the idea of the whole thing is, frankly, to be more aesthetically pleasing. I feel like that kind of, at least for his thing, kind of is counterintuitive, since the whole point is sort of for the chuppah to look less unequal.
Yeah, but the tish would look also unequal. It would be the opposite. The tish would be.
I mean,
the woman is doing all of the stuff.
There are other ways for tishes to not be unequal.
He would say like this. She would give him. Let's imagine it. She would give him the ring, and he would say, she would give him the pen, and he would say, "I'm taking this pen. By taking this pen, I'm obligating myself to mefarnes, you know." And she would be the initiator. And that would be at the tish.
People generally think that like making another event that's also unequal makes the
other way
original event better.
And also no one thinks that the tish is like the wedding moment, right? Like it's still part of the larger wedding, but nobody's
but that's exactly my criticism of Dov Linzer, because he's tricking everybody. He's taking this event, which is supposed to nothing to do with the wedding. It's this and he's making everybody think that that's part of the wedding, which it isn't. And that's exactly what we're not supposed to do. We're not supposed to make the wedding seem like it has other things in it that it's not, that it doesn't have in it. But
why do you say that? What do you mean? That's exactly what we're not supposed to. Oh, in terms of
making it look like it's a chalipin,
right.
Making it look like it's something else than it really is, than the halacha is. But you know, who am I to say what people do? People can do whatever they want, but I'm just saying how I would interpret the ruach of the halacha. But I like that idea of I just thought of it with you guys together now, the tish. Could be a fun thing.
I think you should write a paper about it. I would look forward to reading it.
Okay. It would be, yeah, you're right. Maybe I should. The Kala's tish. Okay. But we're in the middle actually of this. So we're sort of learning the Gemara in the Beit Yosef. So Yavni, we just read the Rashi, where he said that he has to articulate in words that hitkadshi li amar le hitkadshi li. He has to say, marry me, with that thing that I gave to this person at your request.
Yeah, should I go on? ואף אגב, דלא מטה הנאה לידה מדין ערב. ממה שמצינו בתורה, שהערב משתעבד למלווה, אנו יכולים ללמוד. That was just what explaining what we said about the Gemara, ברבא. וגם הרמב"ם כתב בפרק ה' דהה דמקודשת, כשאמר לה התקדשי לי בהנאת מתנה שנתתי על פיך. That's it.
So the Rambam also says you have to say it, but notice he throws in this word hana'ah.
Yeah.
He could just say, which is where everything's. The Rambam actually in a lot of these halachot uses the word hana'ah. He seems to be very interested in this hana'ah going to the woman. But you see here, he's adding it in this case, whereas Rashi didn't say that, and the Gemara didn't say that. The Gemara just says, "Hitkadshi li," the money that I gave to this person, that I'll peak, what you said. I did what you said, so now that's it. Well, we don't. Why do we have to throw in this word hana'ah? The Rambam seems to be concerned there has to be some hana'ah.
But in fact, that seems to go against the Gemara in some ways, right? Because the Gemara says, right, there was the lo mate hana'ah li'ada, and the Rambam is essentially saying there is hana'ah, it's the hana'ah that he gave the gift. And so the Rambam is rereading the Gemara in some way, or he has a different girsa. I don't know what it is, but it's so.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think this is interesting. We're going back and forth between whether we need this hana'ah or whether we just need to do her bidding. The money has to transfer, and it doesn't matter where the money transfers.
I mean, Rashi and the Rambam seems to be seeing the action differently, right? So the Rambam uses the lashon matana, right? Uses the lashon gift, but this language of gift doesn't exist in Rashi, right? Rashi uses lemalveh, right? Rashi uses the term of a loan. So they're looking at it differently.
Rashi uses the word loan?
If you look at the end of Yosef, Medina Arav,
no. That's referring back to the example.
He's just referring to the
I understand, but like Rashi never uses the lashon matana. So for Rashi, it's like a financial transaction, right? She's taking financial responsibility for the money that he gave the guy. For the Rambam, it's more of a present. It's more of a matana. That's what happens. It's less of a financial transaction.
No, I don't agree. I think that he's just saying that the money is being given. That's a matana, is just a giving of money. I don't think that's a distinction. I think the only distinction, or the main distinction, is that he adds the word hana'ah, whereas Rashi, doesn't want to get mixed up.
But that would explain why they view it differently. For Rambam, it's a matana, right? It has like a matana aspect to it. Well, for Rashi, it's just like a financial transaction. And that's why you don't have anah from a financial transaction. You're just taking responsibility. There's no anah associated with it. Rashi is saying, like, even if there is no anah associated with it, since you're taking financial responsibility for the money I'm giving this guy, then you're mekadeshet.
There's no taking responsibility for the money. I don't know what you mean by taking responsibility. Nobody takes responsibility for the money. He just gives money to Plony. That's it.
But not out of goodness of his heart. She asks him to take his own money and give it to someone else.
And he did.
How does the din Arav work?
And the Rambam is just saying, by the way, that's a matana. Well, of course it's a matana. What else is it? It's not. It has to be a matana, because otherwise, if it would be like money that he's going to get back, that is not a matana, that is just like lent to him, then it wouldn't work.
That's where the din Arav comes in. Like she's never going to give him back the money. So the woman is taking responsibility for it. And how is she paying him back? By being mekudeshet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Interesting. Very interesting. All right, let's go on. וכתב הרב המגיד.
וכתב הרב המגיד, כך כתב הרשב"א, והכרחו דאי לא אמר הוא, לא עדיף, ודאי כשנותן.
By the way, I removed that word ודאי. Hagaot Rav Nachum. Remove that word. Vadai. It's not in the Magid as it appears. And it confuses. I think it confuses. I checked in the Rambam, and it's not there, and it seems to me confusing. So behechrachu. Go back.
דאי לא אמר הוא, לא עדיף כשנותן לאחר על פיה, מכשנותן לידה, ואמרה היא, שאינה אלא קידושי ספק. So the Rav Magid explains why we say that he has to say still the language of at mekudeshet li, because it surely isn't any better than if he's giving her the usual kiddushin, and that we said, and she's saying, right, she's the only one who said anything in this case, and so if he gives her after she says it, we have safek kiddushin, not real kiddushin.
In other words, if he gives her the money, and she says, and she says, I'm mekudeshet lecha, that's a safek. And right. So why would we say here that if he wouldn't say anything, she just said, give the money to this guy, and then it would happen, and there would be no statement. How could that work? It's certainly no better than where she said. Of course,
this is to justify what the Rashi added to the Gemara.
Of course, we discussed this with Rav Landis, didn't we? And didn't he have an answer to that? I think
because of the order in which it happened.
No, I think he said, because I think we said that when she speaks, it's worse than silence, right? Didn't we say that? Because it's like it's worse than silence. So maybe it's not a good proof. Maybe it's not a good proof.
Yeah, I think you can argue against it.
Yeah. Okay, but let's go on.
וגם הר"ן כתב שכדברי הרמב"ם ז"ל, וגם הר"ן כתב שכדברי הרמב"ם ז"ל עיקר, וכן כתב רבינו ירוחם, וכתב אינמי מיירי במדבר עמה על עסקי קידושיה.
Right. In other words, maybe if he didn't say anything, maybe it's a case of they were talking about it, and it was clear that what was going on.
In which case he doesn't need to say anything.
In which case he doesn't need to say anything. So to here, he doesn't need to say anything. Here, now read on.
And I think that's where it helps that the way it's being. That's where you can say that the case where she says, where he gives her and she says, I'm mekudeshet, you could say it doesn't count because it's the way they're framing it is that she's saying it sort of after the fact or while he's giving it as opposed to beforehand. Whereas in our case where she's asking him, it's beforehand, and that's why it's more like they're talking about it ahead of time.
Right. Okay. I hear you. Yeah.
ובסימן למד יתבאר דטעמה דמקודשת משום דאי אמרה למאיקרא תן מנה, here it is, תן מנה לפלוני ואקדש אני לך, אבל אם התחיל ואמר לה התקדשי לי במנה ואמרה לו
במנה, I think
במנה, thank you, במנה ואמרה לו תן הוא לפלוני או לאבא או לאביך אינה מקודשת. And so in the next Siman we're going to
we said because by saying give it to your father, she's really rejecting him.
Right.
Finish the last piece.
כתב הרשב"א בתשובה סימן 1000 רכ"ד דהוא הדין אם אמרה הלווה מנה לפלוני ואתקדש אני לך מקודשת, אבל אם אמר להרוויח לפלוני זמן מלווה ואתקדש אני לך אינה מקודשת.
Right. So she could say, this is an important law, she could say, lend money to Plony and I'll marry you. And then he lends her the money. That would also be, it doesn't have to be a present. It can be a loan that has to return. But if she just says, extend the loan that you already gave,
then that doesn't work.
Then it doesn't work. But you already gave to Plony. That doesn't work. So I think we can say from that, you say there needs to be a movement of money, seems like.
Sorry, I just got a quick question on the Bet Yosef. When he says, the last part before Katav Rashba, right? It says, but that seems to be complicated with the Rambam, because the Rambam said the and also in this case, is giving the money al piech, based on what she's saying. So why wouldn't she be Mekudeshet in this case?
Because she's Enomerotza.
Why is she not merut? It's al piech, it's what she's saying. He's doing what she's saying. So why in one case she has ana, but in the other case she has no ana?
Are you talking about like the last scenario where he says no,
right.
so the last scenario, the whole point, it's not that she doesn't have hana. It's that if he says, be mikudeshet to me with that, and she says, go give that to your dad, that's just, they interpret that as her saying, I'm not interested. Like she would have responded differently if she wanted to be mikudeshet to him. So it's not that she's not getting hana. He is doing what she said if he gives it to her dad. She doesn't want it. Saying like, oh, will you be mikudeshet? No, give it to so-and-so. Like,
right, but technically speaking, according to the like, I get that. So it's interpreted as saying she's not interested. Okay.
Right. So it's not, we don't care about like formalistically whether it would be the alpiha, because if there's no ratzon, then it doesn't work anyway.
It's almost like she would say, I'm taking if the woman would open her mouth when the man said, Harei Mekudeshet Li, it's about Zuk, Das Moshe Israel, and she would pick up the ring and say, I am taking this ring as not to be married to you, but I'm just taking this ring as a gift. That she wouldn't be married. But she still got the hana of the ring. I mean, and he may even say, well, then I'm not giving it to you. But if he agreed to give it to her anyway, so just because the act happened of him saying that and she took the hana, she could indicate by words that she's not interested in marrying him.
So technically speaking, it would work as kiddushin, but the fact of this case is that she's not interested. That's why it's not working.
Yes.
Presumably, if after he said,
if she would say, I love you terribly and I want to marry you, and please give the ring to your brother, that would be an interesting question.
Right, because according to the Rambam, right, he does what he's saying and
that should work. From it. Why wouldn't that work? It probably, maybe it would work logically, because if we're saying the only reason that the problem is if he initiates, is because of we're understanding what her meaning is, but if she makes clear what her meaning is, maybe, on the other hand, we might say, no, it doesn't matter. We have paskined hazaka, that any person who says give it to, whenever the woman doesn't initiate, it never means what she says. Never take her.
Technically speaking, it has all the elements necessary.
Yes, exactly.
For it to be a proper kinyan, or a proper, like, for her to be mikudeshet, according to the Rambam at least.
Right. All right, we should take a break. We'll have to take a little break for a few minutes, and then we'll come back. I want to finish. We'll see if I do. Okay, see you in 3 minutes. 5 minutes. Here, so back to the tour. Lexi, you want to read?
Sure. So on Gimel or Bet? So the Amrla Temana, the Gimel, the Amra Temana the Ploni Vekadesh Ani Lo. Okay. Amra Temana the Ploni Vekadesh Ani Lo, Vidat Nolo, Ve Omerla Ota Ploni, Haria Mikudeshet Li, Boto Manash, Kibalti, Mi Ploni Bishilef, Mikudeshet. Fine. So she tells, in this case, she's trying to get married not to the shaliach, but to the other person. And so this guy gives it to Ploni. Ploni says, I'll be like, you'll be mikudeshet with this thing I just received, and she's mikudeshet.
Right. Now this is like one step further than what we said before. we originally just said that she's giving it to a third party. She's giving the money and he's marrying her. So at least he's doing his part. He's giving money and he's marrying her. He's giving it to a different person, fine. But here he's giving money and somebody else is marrying her. It's very strange.
Yeah.
It's very strange. This third party is getting this thing, is getting the money and is married. He's receiving the money and also receiving the kala, also receiving the woman. He's going to be the husband.
That almost sounds like she's being sold.
But she initiated. She initiated it.
So she's selling herself. There's something very.
Yes. What is this why does she want this person to get money? Well, the point is, it's just a technical thing we're doing here. She's getting the hana'ah of her word being fulfilled, but then the question is why is he? But her word is being fulfilled by somebody who is not the chatan. Her will is being fulfilled by a third party essentially, and
Shaliach almost seems irrelevant. Couldn't she just give the money directly to the guy she wants to marry?
Well, then that would just be the case of the Adam Chashuv.
Right. Also, it's not her money. It's not her money. It's this guy. It's not a shliach in the sense that it's not her money. It's his money. It's in what is it similar to? I mean, if you read the Gemara, you would tell me what it's similar to. What is it similar to? We're going to see the Gemara as it's quoted.
It's an Eved Kanani,
To an Eved Kanani. Why is it like an Eved Kanani?
You gave us this case earlier today.
Yeah,
right?
you have to quote me back. Yeah, I'm like, I'm a good teacher. You have to tell me what I told you. Eved Kanani. The person, if you think about the Eved Kanani, a person comes and frees him by buying him from his owner. And the Eved Kanani didn't give any money. And so we learned from the Eved Kanani that even though the Chatan didn't give any money,
He acquires her, just like the Eved Kanani acquires himself.
Exactly, just like the Eved Kanani acquires himself, even though he didn't give any money. This is all from the Gemara. It's just interesting to see that I gave you all these Gemaras because here you have like the Gemaras brought actually to halacha. All these Gemaras are brought in as halacha. So
is there
Yeah.
Is there some reason that he has to be involved in the exchange, either receiving or giving, or can there be a fourth party? Can she say, I want Ploni to give to Almoni, and I'm going to be, and through that I'm going to be married to Gomi over here?
It's an interesting question. Why would it work?
It's still the same statement of she's doing it like an Arev, and he's doing it like an Eved Kanani.
Yeah, but then he's not involved whatsoever in the process, right? Are you talking about a case where she gives money to like a random dude? She's like, give it to like that other random dude, and I'll be married to someone else that's totally out of the picture. That's the case you're referring to, right?
Right, or she doesn't even, no, she doesn't need to give it because that's like a separation.
Right.
But like, yeah,
I think it won't work. I think it's too far. I think it's too different. But maybe we'll think about it. Maybe, yeah. It's too hard for me to think about it right now.
But how would he do that? How would he tell that she's Mekadesh? She's Mekadeshet. Like, we say you are Mekadeshet to me through like those two people that give each other money. Like, how would that work?
Yeah, why not? That's
There's Gimel is Mekudesh. I want Gimel is Mekudeshet. There's that Aleph gives to Bet.
Right.
Right. Well, he has to say. Gimel is going to say, I am marrying you by the hana'ah that you received from Aleph giving to Bet.
But she has to receive hana'ah from him. That's the thing. That's the exchange.
No, she doesn't. That's exactly what this case is saying. He doesn't have to receive hana'ah from him.
Well, because he received the money, right? He received some money out of the whole thing. So he's involved. He's
No.
getting something, so she's getting a nod that is getting something.
No, but
that's
her
the point
Hana,
of the
we're
Evet
kidding, he
Kani
gets
is that the
money.
master of the Evet doesn't have to get anything from the Evet in order to give the Evet.
Because that's also an impossibility if you think about it. The master can't receive anything from the Evet because the Evet doesn't own anything.
But I mean, if we think about this case, I just want to flip it a little bit into like it's almost like a more standard case. But if Reuven gives a ring to a woman and Shimon is standing by and says, Haret Mekudeshli betabad zo, that Reuven gave you and the hana from that, I think that works, right?
Say it again. Reuven gives a ring to the Kala.
Yeah, he gives a ring to the Kala, and Shimon, but not to try and marry her. He gives her a ring, and Shimon says, Haret Mekudeshli betabad zo, right? And she says, great, because
But he was not doing it as his. He was not doing it as the shlichut of the chatan. He was just giving her a ring.
Yeah,
like he doesn't know anything at all in your story.
I don't see why that would work.
That's my question, because it's an analogous case, right? There's a hana being transferred to her by somebody who's not marrying her, and the person is using
We don't know if
third
there's
person.
there's a hana being transferred to her.
Yeah,
and he's obligating himself. No, but the one who's obligating himself, in the case of the Evet Kanani, the one who's obligating himself is receiving money. It's just that it's coming from a third party.
Yeah.
Right. But then we combine it with the case of the Arev.
She is obligating herself, and the money is coming from a third party, you're saying. Same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm asking. I don't know for sure that it works, but it's like I think it's an analogous case. So.
But it seems like Joel, just
Maybe.
to understand, I'm not sure
It's a little bit too. This is too hard for me at this time of night.
That's fair.
But maybe you're right.
So.
I'm wondering if Joel's case is really analogous to Yavni's case, because it seems like in Joel's case, like the guy is just giving her a ring because he wants, like, I don't know, because he wants to, because he's buying something, who knows why, and then and then Shimon comes along as like, oh, I'm using that transaction, but that transaction was kind of already there. Seems like in Yavni's case, Yavni's imagining a situation where like she's like this whole thing is sort of initiated in order to achieve Kiddushin, right? So that seems like maybe the intent is like less important because it's sort of, there's already this like background, right? She says, I want to be married to you, Aleph, Aliyadeh, the thing that Bet gives to Gimel.
Exactly. She's in jail.
And then he's there, and then Aleph says, like, hooray, hooray ad mikudeshet li, blah, blah, blah. That like seems like it has a kind of structure that's a little different than Joel's case. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just more.
Well, you're saying you prefer Yavni's case.
You're saying Yavni's example works than Joel's.
You're saying Yavni's case should work in your opinion.
Yeah, but then what's the limit? What's the limit then? Like, imagine like you and someone else go out for a good meal, right? And then I'm going to a random girl across the street. I'm like, you're making this shot to me. I'll eat it down now that Rav Nachum and someone else had a good meal.
So I think maybe this is the limit then. Maybe you've helped me here, right? That like your case is more like Joel's, where like there's just something going on, and then some other person comes along is like, oh, I'm gonna use that as my thing that I'm gonna use for Kiddushin. Seems like the case Yavni is describing is a lot like the cases we have here, which are like the whole thing is sort of set up from the start as in order to there's a transaction that she initiates in order to effectuate Kiddushin, and then he confirms that with some verbal statement.
So you're saying Yavni's case,
in that way, Yavni's case seems to just like combine the Arev and the other stuff in a way that like works. I don't know.
Mine is just piggybacking off an event that happened versus this is
creating an event. Wait, I want to go forward. I want to go forward. I want to see the Gemara as it's quoted in the Beit Yosef, because that's where we're going to get. Well, this whole discussion is based on it. I guess I understand that everybody's talking because they know this Gemara, and that's great. But maybe we need to refresh ourselves anyway. Maybe some people need to see it again. So Lexi, read in the Beit Yosef.
Okay. Amra Tamana the Pony Bekadesh Anilo Vachule Sham in that Gemara in Kiddushin. פלוני וקדש אני לא מקודשת מדין ערב ומדין עבד כנעני. ערב לאו אף אגב, לא מתי הנא לידיה, משעבד נפשי.
Even though he doesn't get.
Right, even though the Arev doesn't actually get any of the money or the benefit or whatever, they still make themselves obligated to the lender.
Right.
So that's what we were talking about in the last one.
That the woman also doesn't get any benefit, but she obligates herself.
Yes.
Or no,
yes. Yeah, so then Dami Arev had a kanile kachaser mamona, hai gavra kanila hai itzta velo chaser midi. So then it's like, actually, this feels a little different because here the dude who's becoming her like chatan doesn't lose anything. He doesn't spend any money. He just gets this money.
The Arev. About the Arev, what happens? Midami Arev Hadakanile, the one who acquires something. Who is the one who acquires something? The person who.
The person
no one fully acquires something if there's like, but yes, the person they acquire
giving the loan is out.
The lender gave money to the borrower.
Sorry, my jump.
Right. And
so that the Arev will be chayiv to pay him back.
Right. So basically, I guess you could say the lender acquires the responsibility, as it were, of the Arev in that moment, whereas by virtue of the loan that they're paying.
Right,
whereas
exactly.
Here,
the lender
Plony didn't pay anything.
Very nicely said. The lender got this chiyuv. This is what I was saying about the chalifin by the wedding. Because the lender what is he getting? What is the lender getting? He's not getting anything. He's just getting an obligation from the Arev to pay him back if the original borrower doesn't pay it back. Right? The lender gave money to the borrower so that the Arev will be chayiv legally to pay him back. But the point is here, but the husband didn't give up anything. In other words, the lender gave up money in order to get that chiyuv from the Arev, from that third party. I gave this money to Plony so that the Arev would now pay me back. But the husband didn't give up anything to some third party gave it to him. He didn't give up anything to get the obligation of the woman. The woman has now obligated herself to him, but he didn't give up anything. That's what the Gemara is saying.
Right, so that's why the Gemara says that we need both the case of Arev and Eved Kanani to prove this. So,
exactly. So now we're going to have to bring in Eved Kanani to say that to say the other side of that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Eved Kanani yochiach delo chaser mamona deka kanei nafshe. So like here, the Eved Kanani, as we were saying earlier, doesn't spend any money himself and nonetheless acquires himself. Okay. And then so now it's going to ask like why well no, it's going to explain essentially why we couldn't learn just from Eved Kanani. It's different there. Right. So the reason this is also different though than the Eved Kanani is that in the case of the Eved Kanani, the person who essentially, whatchamacallit, that essentially like the owner transfers like ownership of the slave to the slave and the owner receives money. Whereas here, the woman essentially is like transferring ownership of herself and she doesn't receive anything. And so then we have Arev Yochiach Afal Gav Delo Kamate Hana Liede Mishabed Nafshe. So that's where we need to bring in the Arev case where we see an example of somebody who doesn't receive anything and nonetheless makes themselves obligated.
Right. So the two cases together are going to teach us that one, you don't need to actually be the giver of the money. And two, what's two? You can obligate yourself
Without receiving any benefit.
Without receiving any benefit. So that's why Yavni's case is interesting, because in that you have that in that case. You're totally divorced from what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, I thought about. I just want to.
I think almost like a coincidence that he's the one who's getting the money.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say as an example to think of your case as like an actual practical question. You have a woman in jail and a man in jail, and they want to get married. You know, could a third party, you know, well, shlichus could work, but without shlichus, we're not talking about shlichus. We're talking about just, she says, I want money to go from Aleph to Bet. And then Aleph gives to Bet. And he says, I want to marry you by Aleph going to Bet, you know, by Aleph giving money to Bet. That would that work?
Where did he need Edim?
You need where would the Edim be? Right. Yeah. It would have to be when she said this, that she wants this to happen, and you know, you don't have to have Edim everywhere. But yeah. Okay. Katav Rambam. Lexi, yeah.
וכתב הרמב"ם בפרק ה' דהיינו דווקא כשקידשה אותו פלוני ואמר לה הרי מקודשת לי בהנת מתנה זו שקיבלתי ברצונך. Right, the Rambam says that like the ploni has to specifically say like then that, you know, she is מקודשת to him because of this gift. וכתב הרב מגיד יש מי שפירשה שאותו פלוני מינה שליח את זה לקדש לו אישה. הלאו הכי אפילו הודיע לבסוף נתרצה, כיוון שבשעת הקידושין לא היה יודע בהם, אינה מקודשת. Right, so the Magid Mishnah suggests that actually this case is referring to when, and this like helps like, I guess, responds to some of the confusion that we've had around like how sort of weird this case is. He's like, well, this is specifically when like Ploni sent out a dude to find him a wife. And like this woman tells the dude who has been sent out, give this to the guy who sent you and I'll be married to him, right? That like Dafka in that case, according to the Magid Mishnah, or at least the Magid Mishnah says there are people who would say Dafka in that case, then it is effective. But in the case where he isn't essentially a shaliach of Ploni, even if Ploni later says something, it wouldn't be effective.
So how would that work exactly according to the Magid Mishnah? Because if he's a shaliach, then it's like kind of he's giving money to himself. So Ploni sends a dude to find him a wife, right? The girl tells the shaliach, give money to Ploni out of your own money. But like it's like shlucho shadam kemoto, so it's like Ploni's giving money to himself at the end of the day. So
no, but it's different because so the shaliach like here. This is different than a shaliach who goes and does the kiddushin by giving her something. Like when we often think of like shlichei kiddushin, we think of like, you know, this is the shaliach and the guy who says like, I'm giving this to you and you'll be mikudeshet to so-and-so. Whereas here, this guy is like, I would like you to go out and like find me a wife. That would be great. And this woman tells the guy who's been sent out, hey, I'm happy to be married to your buddy. Like give him this and we'll be married. It's different than like when the shaliach is the one.
So he's almost like a dual shaliach. He's shaliach for the guy and shaliach for the girl at the same time.
Kind of.
But like, okay, that makes more sense though.
Yeah.
What does he mean? Kevan de b'shasei kiddushin lo haya yada behen. Who didn't know about them?
The Ploni theoretically. That like well, if the guy I think like I mean because presumably my assumption would be that the shaliach would be like, by the way, this woman said that I should give you some money and that she would then be married to you. But suppose he didn't and like gave the dude like, you know, 100 dinarim and was like, by the way, like Allie would like to be your wife now. Then in the moment that like he was given the money, he didn't even like know that was what was happening, right?
So therefore, because of that problem, therefore the the person giving Ploni the money has to be the shliach of Ploni, so that he already knew that that he's already authorized. That's really what it is. He's already authorized to do this act.
Right. Yeah, but only authorized. But again, it is like the knowing, in the sense that, like, we say, in the case where that guy plopped money in and was like, yes, she would like to be married to you, even if Ploni is now like, oh yeah, cool, I would like to be married to her, like Harayat Mikudeshet, with this money that I was just given. But that doesn't count, because like at the moment it was given, he didn't know that's what was happening. So like there has to be like that when the actual giving is occurring.
Sorry,
I wonder, can we go so far as to say there has to be the entire process of Kiddushin, essentially, right? And so like the first half of the process here happened without the guy who's actually marrying the woman knowing about it. Right? If he's not a shaliach, right, then he, like, the first whole half where she says, I want to be married to this guy, you give him money, and is like, that whole part was hidden to him.
I like to keep it all very simple and say they're all in the same room. I don't want to say they're all in the same room, and it's just a question of who's giving money to who. Like, you don't have to, you can have all the statements being said right there. She can be saying, because it never says that there have to be, that they're not in the same room. It could very well be that she's saying, give this money to him, and then you'll be married to me, and then he'll be married. She's saying, Aleph, give money to Bet, and then Bet, that the Hana'ah that you're receiving it. That I'm receiving Hana'ah from Aleph. Bet, you'll marry me, and Bet is saying, Harei at mikudeshet li b'hana'ah zo she'Aleph natan li, this matana.
So is the Rambam Magid saying that Hana is not sufficient? You need Ana and Ratzon? So you think
for sure.
Everyone thinks that you need Ratzon.
No, but it's kind of in contradiction with the Rambam. I don't think he adds on to him. I think it's a contradiction with the Rambam. The Rambam said it's enough, even if he's not a shaliach, it's enough that she had enough, right? The Maggid Mishneh adds that, like, even though she had enough, since she doesn't know that there was a shaliach, it doesn't work.
The Rambam is just saying, assuming they're all in the same room, so everybody knows what's going on.
Right, like the Rambam isn't explicitly saying that if the guy didn't know while he was being given the money and then said this, it would be fine. He's just saying the guy has to have made this statement.
Oh, where do you see that in the Rambam?
Rambam says that. He says, "Hainu davka kishikitsho to ploni va'amar la harei mikudeshet li b'hana matana zo shekibalti b'ratzonech."
The guy doesn't have to be a shaliach according to the Rambam. So long as Ploni says at the end of the day,
but she's there. He says with your will. She's in the room. She's in the room.
No, even if they're in a different room, right? Let's say, I don't know, talk about a case of e-transfer, right? Or like a transfer through internet. Like, you think about that case. According to the Rambam, as long as the money was transferred, doesn't have to be shaliach, doesn't have to be anything. So long as there is hana, and the guy tells her, that's good enough. The Maggid Mishneh said that it has to be done by ratzon. The middleman has to be a shaliach of some kind. Hana is not enough. You have to have hana and a ratzon. Because if you have just hana, it's not enough. I mean, that's how I understood it, at least.
I think that's why there is a difference between the Maggid Mishnah and the Rambam here, is right? Is that the Rambam is that first? This is why I was trying to call this like part of the process versus the whole process. But it's not so clean. But it's like, it's the Rambam seems to think it doesn't, like, as long as she said give this to Ploni, and according to the Rambam, it seems to be like that's fine, as long as he didn't have to know about it until he got the money. And he's like, oh, okay, great, I agree. And then he goes to her and he says, she could even go along with him. You can imagine, right? Let me back up because I'm being confusing here, right? A case where a woman says to Reuven, she says, Reuven, give Shimon this money so I can get married to him, right? And the two of them go along to Shimon together, right? And and then Reuven gives Shimon the money, and the man says, all right, Mekudeshet li. And so according to the Rambam, that's great. And according to the Maggid Mishneh, it's like, no, Reuven was never Shimon's shaliach, and that's a problem. So I think that's where there's a machloket.
No, but I think the Maggid Mishneh is only because he's assuming that they're not together, and that's why he has to say it. It's sliach. But I think he would agree that if they were all together, they wouldn't have to be a shliach.
Okay.
That's the way I understand. I think they're just thinking about slightly different cases. I think the Maggid is talking about where they're not together, and the Rambam is thinking where they're all together. The way you described. Okay, let's go on.
So we're at the Rashba.
Yeah, Rashba Tama, exactly.
The Rashba Tama Rabbeinu.
Who's that Rabbeinu? Who's that Rabbeinu? I believe it's the Rambam.
No, yeah, it's the Rambam.
It's the Rambam.
Lama Hutzrak Farshak, Shamar Mishnit Kashalo, Harayat Mikudeshet, Hanat Matana, Shikibati Bertonech. So he's asking why the Rambam thinks that the dude has to have said this. Katav, Bad the Rabba Lichora, Mashma de Kolka Haigabna, Karbu Huliot, Helach Manave Kadesh Ani Lecha, the Ena Mikudeshet, Elab Adam Kashuv, Bedafka. Well, you also raised the point that someone brought up earlier, which is that this is in many ways essentially the same as our Adam Chashuv case, right?
Right. In the Rashba, no, I think the Rashba is saying he understands all these cases to be Adam Chashuv, because Stam to say the Hana'ah that my will was fulfilled is not enough. It has to be that I actually have Hana'ah from the money going to that guy, because I can tell my friends, do you know that I gave Elton John, $10? Whoever.
Right, because in this case, it's not even really again, part of what we were saying earlier, it's different than at least when she's trying to marry the guy who's giving the money. He's directly fulfilling a command of hers and performing, as Jim was saying, it's valuable service. Whereas in this scenario, the Plony she wants to get married to isn't even really directly fulfilling any command of hers. And so to extent that the Hana'ah of her thing being fulfilled is, it's really mostly not being done by him. So that's why you could potentially say, no, this is really very similar to the Adam Chashuv case, where the only benefit is from him accepting it, which, yeah.
So now wait. So now look at the Beit Yosef. I think he's gonna argue on this.
Right. So V'divrei Teimahen. Anpan im nifasha shazahu shal alken im nifasha shazahu shaliach vadai. Vadai hu amar leplonit hitkadshi b'hanat matanazo shnatati li b'tzornech shnatati lo b'tzornech she'im lo amar la hashaliach klum heach yafe kolcho yoter mishalcho. Okay, so this is surprising what the Rashba said. If we explain that this is a case where they're shazahu shaliach, this is a shaliach, he definitely said to the woman, be mikadeshet, with the hana of this gift that I gave to the dude, according to your will. Because if he didn't say this, how is this better? What does this mean exactly? In
other words, how is she more powerful than her shliach? This
is kolcho.
Where? Sorry. How is his ability? Can he do more things than his shliach can do?
Is that why do we need him to say it? He'd send it to a shaliach.
In other words, exactly. Shliach Adam Kamoto. So he has more. He has more abilities.
Okay, fine. So it's basically if we say this dude is a shaliach, obviously this dude told the woman you'll be mikudeshet to so and so with this gift that I'm giving, according to what you've said. And if the shaliach said that, why do we need Plony to say that? That's already been made clear.
In other words, it's actually the opposite. Hech yafeh kocho. How is the shliach's ability greater than the person who sent him? Mishalcho, from his sender. Right?
Sorry, I don't really understand that. What does that mean?
So we have to go back.
Confused.
If the davar teimahem daha al ken im Im nifresha shezehu shliach. If it was explicitly said that he's a shliach, vaday have amar leplonit, then he for sure said to the woman, hitkadshi bahanaat matana zo shenetati lo. Then he would have said, the hana'ah that you got when I gave the third party money, marry me with that. Biritzon, because I did it biritzonech. She'im lo amar la, because if he didn't say that, hashliach. She'im lo amar la hashliach klum, because if the shliach didn't say anything, then why would it work? Because if you would say it would work, that would imply that his koach, hech yafeh kocho, the shliach's koach, is yoter mishalcho, because if the man gave money to, if the man who wants to marry if I give money to, if a man gives money to a woman and doesn't say why he's giving it with no words, it doesn't work. So why should the shliach here be able to give money to the third party without saying anything? In other words, we always need a statement. The man needs to make a statement. The chatan needs to make a statement. So therefore, how could you possibly say that the shliach doesn't have to say a statement? Yeah.
I agree with that reading of it. Yeah.
Okay. Wait. So why is that a kasha? Why is that a kasha on the? So Joel, why is that a kasha on the Rashba?
Because so I don't remember what the Rashba said now. The Rashba was the question about whether or not the man had to say something, right?
He said himself. That he implied the man wouldn't have to say anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's just okay. And here he doesn't. So he's saying he has to say something because a normal case they have to say Harayat Mikdash at least. So why would this be any different? If she did the statement, it doesn't work. So he obviously needs to say something. For kol sheken in this case, so it must be that the shliach was speaking. Who that he said something. Im ken yafeh peresh Rabbeinu. Therefore, the Rambam is right. She'ein kan tzorach shliach. That there's no need for a shliach. Why is there no need for a shliach?
Because he makes a statement. That's all it needs, right?
Because according to Rambam, he says something, and they're all in the same room.
That's what I like to say. Yeah.
No, but even if you drop all in the same room, right? It's pretty clear in the Rambam. V'chein im amra lo ten dinar lefloni matana v'kadesh ani lo v'natan lo v'kidsha uto ploni v'amar la harayat mekudeshet li b'hanaat matana zo shekibalti v'ritzonech harayzit mekudeshet. So according to the Rambam, it's very clear he has to say something.
The chatan.
Yeah.
And the shliach is not saying anything.
And the shaliach is not saying anything. So it must be, right, we're not relying on.
So it's not the principle of shliach.
No, there's not, the shliach isn't doing it. The shliach's like.
Right. Because a shliach means that the shliach is doing the act of marriage on my behalf. And and here it's not that he's doing the act of marriage. I'm still doing the act for myself. And he's just like the person who caused the money to move around. What?
He's Western Union. He's the transfer of money.
I mean, that's the thing that's confusing a little bit because he's sort of like a shliach, but he's a shliach of a different type. He's a shliach not for kiddushin. He's a shliach for just causing money to move around.
Right. I mean, I think that kind of fits with what we were saying at the beginning of like the separation between the like change in status and the money changing hands. Right. The chatan is doing the change in status, and there's another guy who's doing the money changing hands.
Right. And that's right. That's that exactly. And they don't have to be the same parties. And the chatan needs to do his part. And his part is saying those words. And so therefore he's not a shliach for the kiddushin.
I do wonder, can I ask one question? I do wonder whether you can like save the Rashba from this problem by saying, this is going to get complicated. I think I can get this right. By saying that we read it the way the Maggid Mishnah reads it, where it's this like, I send someone to go find me a wife. And then when I said, you, Floni, go out and find me a wife with this money, that's like enough of a statement. So I don't need to say anything further because it's like, I don't need some additional remark. So it's not that it's worse. Like, then we can get out of this problem of saying that the
shliach can do something that the chatan himself couldn't do.
Something that the guy himself can't.
Because you're saying the words actually occurred. They just occurred at an earlier time.
Occurred like a while ago in a different place, but they happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now you might have a problem. You might say, well, that's sort of, it's not sufficient enough. It's not specific enough because it doesn't specify the woman. Right? It says, go out and find me a woman. It doesn't say, go out and find me, Rivka. So that's that might be an issue, right? But
well, who says that the shliach is so general? Why are you saying the shliach is so general?
Not in the shaliach case. In this other case, like in the way the Maggid Mishnah is reading case, where like I go out, I say to so and so, go find me a wife.
Why is that what he said? Go find me a wife?
It's the Maggid Mishnah's Yesharim case, yeah.
Yeah. Yesh misha pirsha ba'oto ploni min shaliach et elakadesh lo isha.
No, but
it could be a particular, yeah.
Okay, fine, sure. So then
I think it's a particular woman.
Right.
So I don't think that's a problem. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe you're right. But I like what you're saying. You're saying that the statement to the shliach might be the harei mikudeshet. Marry me this woman.
Now the problem is, when does the kiddushin happen in that story? I guess, right? Because if you think that the kiddushin happens when the guy says the thing, he's saying it, and like her receiving it is like whatever. Right. You have this whole like toch kadei dibur, like maybe there's too much temporal separation problem.
Well, this is correct. This whole idea of the shliach is causing a big problem. That's why I like to put them all in the same room, because why do I say that? Because the Gemara didn't deal with any of these questions. And why didn't it deal with any of these questions? Because it's another factor that wasn't. We're just talking about minimally. Where does the money have to go? Into whose hands does it have to go? And the Gemara was just saying, A can give the money to B, and B can be married to the woman. That's all the Gemara was saying. Wasn't dealing with this complicated question because it was assuming that everybody's in the same room. But now we have to say, well, what if they're not in the same room? Does it also work? And then we're getting into thick woods. And we had two. Well, how would you summarize that? What is our resolution? What are the two thoughts on that question?
So are we answering the question by saying that the Rambam doesn't need a shaliach, or that we're talking about a case where there is no shaliach involved, according to Rambam?
I think the Rambam is not dealing with the question of whether they're far apart, and I think that's the Maggid Mishnah saying that when they're farther apart, and he's saying when they're far apart they don't need to say anything, and the Beit Yosef is saying really they do need to say something, because why should it? If you need to say something when they're in the room, they should also say something when they're far apart.
Okay, but assuming we're talking about a case when they're not in the room, I just want to hear your thoughts on it.
I think so. That's the machloket. I think that's what the Beit Yosef is saying, that that the original, maybe like Sarah is saying, the original statement is to the messenger to go marry me, Rivka, is the Harei Mikudeshet.
Yeah, but she needs to hear it, so the shaliach has to repeat it again. You can't just like mutter it under your breath. She doesn't hear it, and then it's the kiddushim. Like the shaliach has to make an action on behalf of his mishluach. Or I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how to say it.
But she basically hears an equivalent version of it when the guy says to her, the guy, like, she hears an equivalent version when the intermediary performs the transaction and like explains what's going on.
Yeah, but even if they're talking Alaska Kiddushim and he doesn't say anything, gives her a ring, it's Safek, right? So same thing in this case. If he doesn't say anything,
but he did say something. That's exactly my point. He said something at the beginning.
Right, but if she doesn't hear it, it's a Safek Kiddushim. It's not a true Kiddushim.
Why does he doesn't have
to hear it? She needs to hear Ariat Mekudesheli. It doesn't matter what he said to the Shaliach.
Only if, wait, I guess I'm not sure
the
that
shaliach can say it, right?
The shaliach
the shaliach has to say it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's to be some, I mean, seemingly, or some Iskei Kiddushin going on somewhere.
Yeah, but that doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be the sort of amira of like Hareyan Mikudeshet Li does not necessarily have to be the thing that she hears, is what I'm saying. Which we know because of the sort of base case of Oskin Botoanyan, right? If they're talking, that's sufficient, even if.
So what, the fact that the shaliach showed up would be like Oskin Botoanyan?
Well, the guy, he comes and he says like, okay, I'm gonna give
money to this dude. That should be enough for Oskin
I'm gonna give money to this dude, like, for the purposes of Kiddushin. Does it? I don't know.
Anyway, basically, the let's just summarize. Let me just summarize. The Rashba is saying that the shliach shouldn't need to say anything, and the Beit Yosef says, "What do you mean? The shliach should say something, just like the husband should say something." But then he goes on, and he says, "V'zehu shelo nizkar b'gemara she'oto ploni amar le'ken." And the fact that, what about the fact that in the Gemara it doesn't say anything about the shliach saying anything? Even though the Beit Yosef just said that he would have to say something. Lo hutzruchu lahazkir, it wasn't needed to mention. Mivnei shekvar yadua shamekadesh sarich shiomar harayat mikudeshli. So the fact that Gemara didn't say it is just because it's a known halach. It's obvious, so obvious that they need to say it. It's yadua to us that the shliach would have to say harayat mikudeshli. So he's supporting the Rambam against the Rashba. Bakusha shikshahu zal delachora mashma b'kiyai gavna imeno adam chashuv eno mikudeshet, and that kasha that the Rashba asks. But wait a minute, if he's not an important person, then what hana'ah is there? And what hana'ah is there from giving just to a stam person money? Why is that called hana'ah? And Omer l'dvarav im ken yafek koach hashliach mimashalcho. If that's true, then the power of the shliach is more than the chatan. Because when the shliach marries or mikudeshet, it works. Because omer ken, but if the chatan himself says the same thing, what is the same thing? That he's giving money to Ploni. Lotit, I'm giving money to this Adam Chashuv. Lotit Kadesh. V'zeu tema elavada yesh chiluk bein hahi de'inyan Adam Chashuv helech mana mishala v'hi chasra mamon. So he says like this: in a case where it's her money, then it has to be Adam Chashuv. Lefichach ba'inyan Adam Chashuv. Because she lost money, so she has to get some real benefit, which is giving to a man chashuv person. V'shelo b'chashuv, but when it's not an important person, b'ma titkadesh, aval, because if it's not important, then there's no real hana'ah. Aval, in other words, he's saying like this: if you're going to say that the fact that her word got fulfilled by the shliach is a hana'ah, but we wouldn't say that. In other words, we have a din that if it's an important man, if it's not an important man, and you give him money, and she gives her money, then she gives him money, he's not married, because it's not an important man. But why? Why should that not work? If she would give to a shliach money, if she would give to another man, and he would say, if the husband would give to that man, that same man, it would work. That's kind of weird, right? In other words,
no, but I think this is dafka, whatever.
Let me repeat myself. Let me repeat myself before you say anything. I just want to repeat myself. The man, we already have a halacha that if a woman gives to an unimportant man money, she can't be married to him by that. So why should it be that if a woman says to her potential chatan, give money to an unimportant man, I will be married by that? That doesn't make any sense, because that's like saying that the shliach, which is the chatan, is more powerful than she herself. If she herself would give to an unimportant man, it wouldn't work. But if he gives, why did we say that? Because she is. So why would that work?
Wait, but that's not a shaliach, because it's not her. If it would be shaliach, if she gave money to someone else to get right, it's a.
What?
If to be a proper shaliach, it would have to still be her money.
No, but that's what it's saying. When she directs the chatan to give the man to give the money to this unimportant man, that's her shliach. She is directing it.
The way I understood it, sorry, go for it.
Okay, never mind.
No, I think the case here is if she gave directly, instead of using this intermediary and saying, give this money to this man, right?
And wouldn't work
unless he's an adam chashuv. But if she has a shaliach, it does work. And so why does it work? Well, she actually hasn't lost any money in this case, right?
Right. So that's what
that's
the
HSS answer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the answer. But what I understood as being the comparison was between the cases that we have here, where it's like either she tells the guy she wants to get married to give money to somebody else, and then via that shlichut, she's married to the guy who went and gave money, versus the case where she sends a guy to give money to Ploni and she's Mikudeshet to Ploni, and being like, why is she Mikudeshet in the case where the dude transferring the money is the one she wants to get married to, but not in this one unless it's an Am Chashuv. But for us, I feel like we gave a reasonable answer for that, which is that like, in the case where the guy she wants to be Mikudeshet to is a shaliach, he's like doing more on her behalf than the case where the guy is just receiving. Like
that's his next line. That's his next line.
So are we redefining what ana is? So when she gives out of her own money, she needs for the guy receiving it to be an am chashuv.
I mean, it's kind of about like the total balance,
right?
Because she lost more. It's like almost because he lost.
Right.
She lost.
Like
you
need a net positive. You need more of a big hana from the guy receiving it to counteract your loss from actually spending money. Whereas if you're not spending anything, just a little hana is good.
Okay, fine. Okay, guys, I actually have to go. Thank you so much. It was really interesting and fun share. Bye.
He says like this is just the last line here. He says, Aval kan eino chasra mamon klal. Here she doesn't lose anything when it's the man giving the money to the other man. V'hinenet mish nitkayemet mitzvata b'mamon shel acherim. Kach nireh li. Actually, it's not the Beis Yosef. Ad kan l'shana. All this was who? I guess all this is the Rashba. I'm a little bit unclear on that, but it says Ad Kan Lashona there.
There's an Ad Kan Lashona after the Rashba earlier, though.
Yeah.
I always mark the sources for the Ad Kan Lashonos like in the margin, and I have a question mark there. I was also confused.
Okay, so we're in good company. But in any case, he's teaching us this principle that when he's making a very interesting point that for a non-Adam Chashuv, it doesn't work because you're actually the kala is actually losing money. The woman is actually losing money. But when the Adam when it's money from a third party, then even a regular person getting money would work.
But then shouldn't we have to quantify it? Like, in other words, if that's really what we care about is like some balancing of the accounts where the amount that she loses is sort of comparable or has some relation to the amount that she gains, and we should be in the business of saying like, oh, she can only give X amount because like this guy, right? Like for Barack Obama, you can give a really fancy present, but for like, I don't know, some like less chashuva person, you can give only.
You're saying the Beit Yosef, or whoever he's quoting, is making a distinction, but it's a quantitative distinction, not a qualitative distinction.
Yeah, and we don't have any when we talk when we talked in whatever 2 Simanim ago or whatever it was about the Adam Chashuv, we didn't make those quantitative distinctions. We just said if it's an Adam Chashuv, she gets Hana'ah. That's it. We don't say like, oh, the Hana'ah is weighed against the, she gets 20 units of Hana'ah from getting the thing, but she bought a gift that was worth 40 units. So
I think this might tie into the fact that we haven't, like in the earlier sources, we weren't talking about Hana'ah for these other cases. And I think the point is the analogy to, I haven't managed to wrap my head around it completely, but the analogy to Arev and Eved break down when there are only two parties. And that's why it's actually like, once we're coming from that direction, we can only get so far and we need that third party. And then the case of her giving him money is actually a completely different conceptual structure.
Right, but
that's why it depends on Hana'ah. But
that's interesting. He said that goes again, but that's his kasha on all of that, is this idea of Yafe kocho yoter mishalcho. He's saying it seems a paradox to say that when there's a shliach involved, when there's a third party involved, all of a sudden there's more abilities than when there
because
are.
It's not really a shaliach. It's a different thing that's happening when I'm saying I'm going to be an arev.
In other words, it's so we're going to say that actually it is more powerful because it's not a shliach. You're saying it's like I'll give an example like a mafia leader. Or any important, let's say a mafia leader, he enjoys the fact that he's got all these people in a web, and this one's doing this for him, and this one's receiving this, and he gets a certain, pleasure out of the fact that he's manipulating many people to do circles for him. And whereas just the Hana'ah, directly giving money to somebody, is very rare. It's a rare thing that you're actually going to enjoy giving money to somebody, but the idea of manipulating people is that that's why people want power. Why is power desired by people? Why do dictators want power? It's not just for the benefits they get; it's also for the power they have over other people. That pleasure of like he says at the end here, "Hinenet shemitkayemet mitzvata b'mana shel acherim." Just the pleasure of knowing that your will is getting fulfilled by all these other people. Yavni? I'm just trying to distinguish. Anyway, we're thinking about it. Yeah, we're out of time. It's a very complicated subject here. And I guess we're not going to do the rest of the Shulchan Aruch on this Siman. Even though there's some very interesting things there. Hey, Vav and Zayin are very interesting. But we'll leave it. Next week, we're going to do Lamed. So, yes, Joel says in the Chazarah, he's going to go boom, boom, boom through the Shulchan Aruch. Great. Maybe I'll pop in. Okay, Laila Tov, everybody.
Laila Tov, Shkoch.
Shkoch.